So one thing that's annoying is because we have all the changes that we made for the live server, like debug equal to false, if we go to our terminal and I say, that I want to say Python 3 manage.py run server, okay, to go see what we've got, and then I go on my computer here, let's go to localhost 8000, you'll notice I get an issue here, and that's because when I'm in debug mode, I would have to specify localhost as one of the things here. And really, I want to be in debug mode when I'm on my own computer, and it's like, this isn't a great setup. Well, there's a way that we can change this by having essentially two different settings files. One is the settings.py, another one is local settings.py. And that's what we added into our git ignore. And this is a great workflow so that you can have your changes locally and then also live. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file here inside of personal portfolio. I'm going to say new file. I'm going to call this local_settings. It's important to have this same name just because that's what we put into our git ignore. Technically, you could call it whatever you want, like my changes or whatever, but this really is like the common form that people follow. So I would do this. So make this file called local settings. Then we're going to go back to our settings, and down at the very bottom here, we're going to add some extra code. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to say, hey, try and see if we're on, if there's a file here called local settings. If there is, go ahead and implement the changes from there. So what we're going to do is say try : and then we're going to say from local_settings import star. So that's saying grab everything from the local settings file. Then we're going to do an accept : and then I'm going to, we got to be a little more specific here. Accept capital import error. And if you'd like to, I kind of like to say something like print something out here so that we can see and say looks like no local file. You must be on production, which production is another name for like your live server. So you don't have to do this, but I think this is kind of a nice thing to have there. Okay. So I'm going to save this file, and then I'm going to add the changes that I want in my local file. So for example, when I'm just here on my local computer, I want debug to be equal to true. So I'm going to copy that line, go to my local settings and just paste that in and change this to say local is equal to true. The other thing is I don't want any of these allowed hosts. So I'm going to copy this, for example, and I'm going to paste this inside of here. So I'm going to, save that. So now the local settings has these two things, for example, and in settings, we had this at the very bottom. Make sure that that's saved. And now if we open up our terminal and let's do like a Control-C and run this again. Oh, and look at this. We're getting the printout. Looks like no local file. So this isn't good. This is telling us it's not finding that. Here, I forgot to do from .local settings. That's saying look in this directory for the local settings. Okay, so I'm going to save this. And now if we go back to the terminal, let's do a Control-C, run that again. All right, there's no message there, so it should be pulling in those files. If I go back to this project and reload, so the issue that we're facing here is it's saying, hey, you don't have localhost 8000 in your allowed hosts. And I was thinking, well, that was the whole point of the settings. And if we go back to our project here in my local settings, I forgot to make this an empty list. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, save. Let's reload the page. Everything's back to normal. Okay. So awesome that we now have a clean working website here locally. And when we push this up, that it's going to have those new changes. And look at this. If we go back to our terminal, I'm going to do a Control-C to stop, and I do a get status. Okay. You can notice that it only has the changes for the settings.py. It doesn't do anything about local settings. Pretty cool. All right. This is now where I'm going to take you through the ultimate flow if you have changes and you're trying to push them live to your site. So the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to see if we've added any sort of extra packages to our project via pip. So a way that we can do this is if you actually type out, in my case, I'm using pip3. I'm going to say pip3 freeze, and then this little caret, the greater than sign, over to a file that I'm going to call requirements.txt. Okay? So if we go ahead and do this and go back to our code editor, you can see what this file looks like. Okay. You can see basically this just finds anything, any pip package that we're using on our own computer. And the thought is we're probably going to want to use these on our server. Like, so for example, if we were coding and we needed to add a new item here, we would go ahead and run this. Now, odds are most times that you do changes, you're not going to need that, but I always recommend just running this line of code to say, okay, make sure there's nothing there. So now if I do a git status, okay, you'll notice I have these two files. So I'm going to do the git add dot. I think that's a cool little tip there that just like adds everything for us. I'm going to do a git commit -m. So you have to commit your code. So I'm going to call this new local settings. Okay. And to really prove that this is working too, I'm actually going to pull back from committing this. Let's go ahead and make another change on our website that we'll be able to see. So I'm going to go, for example, to my maybe my home page here. So let's go to the portfolio. Let's open up home. So let's maybe go ahead and change something here, like Nick Walter is Commander-in-Chief at Zappy Code and lives in downtown Tokyo. So maybe I'll add like an emoji here. So let's go ahead and throw in some sort of face. Okay, here's happy face. So I'm going to save this. Make sure that this looks good locally. Okay, so that looks good. So now the real test is going to be if I can get this at nickwalter.python anywhere, because if I reload this, obviously those changes aren't showing up. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the terminal. I'm going to do a Control C. So I'm going to do my git add dot, and then I'm going to do a git commit -m local settings. That's kind of like what I changed here. So now if I do a git status, there should be nothing here. So I'm going to do then a git push origin. Okay, so this pushes it up to GitHub. All right. Okay, so now that those changes are up on GitHub, I'm going to go ahead and move over to my console. So normally if you opened this up for the first time, you'd have to type out work on and then, you know, in our case, portfolio venv, but I'm already inside of there, so that's fine. Then once we're in there, you're going to have to move into your directory with your project, but again, I'm already there, so that's fine. What I'm going to do is a git pull origin. So I'm going to pull in the new code changes. Once I've done that, remember we have this new file here, this requirements.txt. So I'm going to now type out pip install -r and then requirements.txt. And what this does is it goes and it grabs anything that's new inside of there and installs it. Now, if things are already there that we have specified, it's totally fine. But it's going to go grab those different pieces and bring them into our project. So Python Anywhere notoriously takes a little bit of time with this, so let's go ahead and bring it back when this is done. All right, now that that's done, you need to make sure and migrate anything. Maybe you had made some migrations locally on your own computer. So we're going to do a Python manage.py migrate. Okay, there is nothing for us, so that's going to be no issue there. The next is we have to collect any static that has been added, so we're just going to run Python manage.py collect static. Okay, and again, no changes, although I guess this does have a couple, so we're going to say yes to overwrite that, but I didn't think we had changes. I wonder where those came from. But regardless, okay, we've done that. Now that you've done that, we just need to go back to Python Anywhere, go to web, do the reload here. And now, so notice this is localhost, and we have the emoji showing up. The live one, the old one did not have it, but now if we reload, check that out. We have the emoji. And you notice we don't have any other issues. Like this isn't in debug mode. Like if I do / and some random stuff, it does the nicer page than showing all of our code and whatnot. So that's cool that we now have the local settings and then, you know, the production settings. So there you have it. You know how to upload your project to Python Anywhere, get everything set up, and if you have changes, you know the workflow to go through in order to do all that. Really, the last thing that I have for you is how to have your own domain for a particular website. Now, this is going to cost you, one, to buy the domain, and two, the upgrade in Python Anywhere. It's $5 a month to be able to have your own custom domain. So you've got to decide whether or not you want to do that. But if you're interested, let's go ahead and talk about that in the next lecture. If not, just go ahead and move on to the next section where we're making a sweet, sweet app.